More people are standing up for life in the wake of New York's extreme abortion law. I'm Emily Druby, and that story is ahead.
Right-wing radicals are on the march in Germany. Now they're being linked to that mosque massacre in New Zealand.
Who lives? Who dies? Who decides?
Chicago Cardinal Blaise Supich urging Illinois lawmakers to reject proposed abortion bills that he calls disturbing.
Students at one Catholic academy won a major award at a citywide robotics competition, and now they'll be on exhibit at a Queens museum. I'm Tim Harfman, and I'll have that story coming up.
I had called myself pro-life, but I was very inactive.
That woman, one of many who are changing the way they look at life. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. There's a growing backlash over New York's extreme abortion law. A new poll shows a big majority are rejecting the bill's provision that permits late-term abortions. The details in a moment. But first, Currents News' Emily Druby reports on people who are becoming more pro-life than ever before in reaction to the law.
As Denise Collins prepares her morning tea before heading to Mass, she thinks about the Reproductive Health Act, the Governor Cuomo-backed law that eliminates virtually all restrictions on abortion in the state.
I thought, how could this be? There weren't any hearings, or it didn't seem to really be in the news, and it just occurred.
She says the law has motivated her to become more pro-life.
I had called myself pro-life, but I was very inactive and felt guilty for not paying attention to what was going on with the issue.
Collins is not alone. Lauren Sika of the Life Center of New York in Bay Ridge says she's also seen the pro-life movement grow since Cuomo signed the bill into law.
Well, that a lot of people who have not been pro-life are so horrified by this bill that they're turning on our side. They're coming to realize that abortion is wrong.
Denise Collins also at one time approved of legalized abortion until she faced questions about snuffing out the lives of the unborn.
That fateful question, like why? Why would you actually do that? Turned me around.
As Collins heads to Mass at the Immaculate Heart of Mary Church in Windsor Terrace, she knows the sanctity of life will be supported by her parish and fellow parishioners. With the help of parishioners like Collins, Immaculate Heart has started a pro-life ministry.
And that's a direct result of what has been festering for a while as abortion has become more and more accepted.
The group is new, but they plan on offering information and support for the unborn.
We have to get the word out there because the media, television, everything, the internet is giving a false sense of message. It's not the truth.
The pro-life ministry meets once a month. Those interested can call the rectory at 718-871-1310 or email Deacon John at ihmbrooklyn.org. And a Eucharistic adoration dedicated to the pro-life movement being held here every second Friday of the month at 8 a.m. In Windsor Terrace, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The new poll shows that a majority of New Yorkers would limit abortion to the first 3 months of pregnancy. Sponsored by the Knights of Columbus, the survey was done by the Marist poll. It comes on the heels of Governor Andrew Cuomo's push to eliminate virtually all restrictions on the deadly procedure, even up to the moment of birth. The poll's findings are that 75% of all New Yorkers would ban abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. Among those surveyed, 69% are Democrats, 73% of independents, and 89% of Republicans said they would support the 20-week ban. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is also mobilizing support for the lives of the unborn. The Brooklyn Diocese is joining the international 40 Days for Life campaign during Lent. The bishop's action is in response to New York's extreme abortion law. He's encouraging prayer, fasting, and education. The Brooklyn Diocese has published resource materials relating to the 40 Days for Life online. Go to dioceseofbrooklyn.org and click on the Marriage and Family tab. Chicago's Cardinal Blaise Supich taking action against a pair of Illinois abortion bills that he calls radical and disturbing.
Who lives? Who dies? Who decides? The state and its leaders have not only a responsibility, but also a vested interest in defending the sacredness and value of every human life.
The Cardinal and 6 other Illinois bishops this morning went to the state's capital in Springfield and told the General Assembly to vote down the proposed legislation. The measures would repeal all existing restrictions on abortion in the state, remove protections for doctors and hospitals who morally object to performing abortions, and repeals an existing law that requires healthcare professionals to notify parents before performing abortion on a minor. New York is taking action today over the national opioid crisis. The state's attorney general is suing the billionaire Sackler family and their company Purdue Pharma, who are associated with the drug OxyContin. Attorney General Letitia James issued a warning.
If you do not get into compliance with the law, we have outlined in myriad ways in this lawsuit that we will not allow you to continue selling controlled substances in New York.
Nearly 40 states have brought cases against Purdue and other opioid drug makers. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says an average of 130 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. On Capitol Hill, there's a furor over funding for the Special Olympics. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos faced off with Democrats over her proposed budget that would cut out money for the program that benefits disabled and disadvantaged people. Senator Dick Durbin questioned her decision.
Let me just be very clear.
Can I ask you, did you personally approve this? I think a yes or no will do, the $18 million cut of the funding for Special Olympics?
No, I didn't personally get involved in that.
Lawmakers say her budget is unlikely to make it through Congress with the cuts intact. Mexico's President Andrés Obrador is calling on Pope Francis to apologize for violating the human rights of indigenous people. However, Melissa Butts reports the Holy Father and his predecessors have already done that, long before the Mexican leader recorded his demands on video.
Envié ya una carta al rey de España y otra carta al Papa para que se haga un relato de agravios y se pida perdón a los pueblos originarios.
The Vatican has not responded to this letter, but the spokesman recalls the pontiffs have addressed the theme many times. The most recent demand for an apology toward the treatment of Native peoples was fulfilled by Pope Francis in 2016 during his trip to Mexico. In the state of Chiapas, at Mass with the indigenous communities, the Pope recognized the suffering of these people.
Qué bien nos haría a todos hacer un examen de conciencia y aprender a decir perdón.
In Bolivia, a year earlier in 2015, Pope Francis reiterated the request for forgiveness already made by Pope John Paul II with these words.
Que la Iglesia, y cito lo que dijo él, se postre ante Dios e implore perdón por los pecados pasados y presentes de sus hijos. Pido humildemente perdón, no solo por las ofensas de la propia Iglesia, sino por los crímenes contra los pueblos originarios durante la llamada conquista de América.
Pope Benedict XVI also spoke of shadows during that process of evangelization. He did so in a general audience when he returned from his trip to Brazil. In the Dominican Republic in 1992, his predecessor, Pope John Paul II, spoke of the injustices indigenous peoples were subjected to, just as he did in 1983 in Guatemala. Melissa Butts, Currents News.
3 survivors of Chile's most infamous predator priests have won their lawsuit. Juan Carlos Cruz, Jose Murillo, and James Hamilton are being awarded $150,000 each by an appeals court. They accuse former priest Fernando Caradima of sexually abusing them decades ago. The ruling overturns a lower court that found the Santiago Archdiocese innocent of wrongdoing involving Caradima. President Trump is reacting to the latest developments in the controversial Jussie Smollett case, saying the FBI and the Justice Department will be reviewing the decision to drop criminal charges against Smollett. At the same time, Chicago's Mayor Rahm Emanuel wants to send the actor a bill. Camila Bernal has the latest from Chicago.
Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel told a local radio station he plans to bill Jussie Smollett for the cost of police resources involved in his case.
One level is the financial cost. There is another issue as it relates to an ethical cost.
The Empire actor was accused of staging a hate crime on himself in January and filing a false police report. On Thursday morning, President Trump announced the FBI and Justice Department would be reviewing the Jussie Smollett case, 2 days after all charges against him were dropped. The state's attorney, Kim Foxx, recused herself from the case and admitted a Smollett relative also reached out to her directly.
After I received that call, I did talk to Superintendent Johnson. I had shared with him the concerns that had been relayed to me.
Trump's tweet echoes requests by the police union, who also called for a federal probe, specifically into Fox's involvement in the case.
I'm baffled and I think that's one of the reasons the story keeps growing, is because there doesn't seem to be any reasonable explanation for what they did.
In Chicago, I'm Camila Burnell.
The Trump administration is coming under fire from the nun who's in charge of the Catholic Health Association. Sister Carol Keehan is opposed to the White House move to strike down the Affordable Care Act. She said it would be, quote, unconscionable and immoral and would detrimentally affect most Americans in our country. Sister Carol says 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions could be at risk if the act is ended. Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio had special international gathering today with a large group of priests. The Immaculate Conception Center was filled with clergy from all around the world that work with the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens. They assembled for a seminar led by the bishop and for Mass.
Today we have a meeting with all of our extern priests, we call them international priests. They're coming from different places helping us. But we like to bring them together at least once a year so we can talk to them about their issues, that we thank them for coming and helping us in our diocese, and that we're concerned about them.
Bishop DiMarzio added that each of them has the same responsibilities of priests ordained in the Brooklyn Diocese. There's a lot more news headed your way. The growing right-wing movement in Europe is now being linked to that mosque massacre in New Zealand. Deadly flash floods ravage parts of Iran and capture the attention of Pope Francis. And the Holy Father reacts to the viral video of him pulling his papal ring away from pilgrims during his visit to Loreto. The NYPD is on the hunt for a woman who punched a 70-year-old parishioner inside of St. Monica's Church on the Upper East Side. The suspect allegedly told the victim to shut up as she was praying on Tuesday morning, then punched her in the mouth. Police say the assailant frequents the area and may be known as Annie. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS or text CRIMES to tip 577. The man behind the 2017 fatal car attack in Charlottesville is spending the rest of his life behind bars. James Alex Fields pled guilty to 29 federal hate crimes on Wednesday.
Pretty detailed statement of facts that included specific details about this defendant's background, his affection for Adolf Hitler, Nazi Germany, anti-Semitic and racial views.
The 21-year-old drove his Dodge Challenger into a crowd of protesters during a rally almost 2 years ago. He was convicted in December. In the wake of the mosque massacres in Christchurch, one European far-right group has come into focus because of its financial links to the attacker. The group, called Generation Identity, is part of a growing far-right movement in Europe and beyond. Nick Robertson sits down with one of the members in Germany.
They are the new face of Europe's far right. Young, clean-cut activists running training camps, blocking a migrant route through Europe, crowdfunding a ship in the Mediterranean to turn migrants back to Africa. They call themselves Generation Identity and claim European culture and identity is in danger from Islam and immigration.
We're addressing young people that go to university or to school and say, okay, I don't want terrorism, I don't want mass migration in Europe.
German activist Alexander Malinky-Kleiner is one of their breakout social media stars.
That we need a protection.
He is still angry that Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel allowed more than 1 million migrants into the country 3 years ago.
I don't want to live in a country that needs road blockades. I don't want to live in a country where terrorist attacks are normal. I don't want to live in a country where women has to to cover their hair because, yeah, Islamization. Yeah, that's not racist.
But these extreme views have landed them on the watch list of Germany's domestic intelligence agency.
How should I understand the identitarian movement?
They are reinventing German racism, and this makes them dangerous. This basic attitude, you can't be a German unless you're a German, so to speak, by nature.
The dangers are real. After a Syrian migrant allegedly killed a German this summer, right-wing groups in the now infamous town called Chemnitz came out in force to protest against refugees and immigration. The message was clear: you are not welcome. Every Monday for 4 years, supporters of the right-wing Pegida group have marched in Dresden, protesting against immigration.
People from Africa and everywhere will come to here and destroy our economy and our culture.
Among this crowd, Trump's America First policies are popular. Meet a politician whose right-wing party rode this discontent from 0 to 25% in the last local election.
Everything went wrong. And then the migration crisis. That's when many woke up and said something is not quite right here.
Neufert's AfD went mainstream by promising to close the borders, the kind of rhetoric that propelled Donald Trump in the US. There is no single reason for the rise of the right wing here, and root causes vary from region to region, but there are common threads, and biggest among them is immigration. And that issue is causing a surge in the right wing all across Europe. The old political order is crumbling. Where Germany, Europe, or the US go from here is uncharted territory. Nick Robertson, Saxony, Germany.
Pope Francis is praying for the victims of flash floods in Iran, where at least 26 people were killed. The Holy Father expressed his heartfelt solidarity with all those affected and is praying for the deceased. Rescuers are still searching for survivors and hundreds have been injured. The heavy storm dropped a month's worth of rain in only a few hours. There's new reaction tonight to the international viral video of the Pope and attempts to kiss his papal ring. These images show Francis in Loreto repeatedly withdrawing his hand as people bow to kiss his ring, and it has caused some controversy. Conservative Catholics said the episode was, quote, disturbing. Now, an added layer to the story occurred yesterday at the Pontiff's general audience. He greeted bishops and nuns with kisses. The Vatican is responding to the worldwide discussion. National correspondent to the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us now with some answers. Christopher, the Vatican responding. What is the Vatican saying?
Liz, today the Vatican finally responded to the story and they said, look, this was a very long receiving line and the Pope simply became concerned about germs. You know, people leaning down to kiss the ring. The Pope was concerned that, you know, a predominantly elderly crowd might actually, you know, pick up something that was contagious. So he said, you know, he pulled back.
Now, why do you think the Vatican really just decided to issue clarification on seemingly what could be interpreted as a trivial matter?
Yeah, you know, this isn't a, you know, great doctrinal question or anything like that, but it was kind of like catnip. Everyone had something to say about this. And I think the Vatican just thought, okay, it's played in the news cycle 24 or 48 hours. Let's just put a stop to it and say, this was a very simple matter. Let's move on.
Everything is open to discussion, right? As we see, especially with this Pope. Will this explanation from the Pope satisfy everyone, anyone?
Well, everyone has their own spin on this. Some say this is the Pope, you know, who wants to show humility and bring down the papal office to earth. Others say, you know, this is the Pope ridding, you know, it's the Church of traditions, and they lament that fact. I don't think, you know, the Church has gradually moved away from the kissing of the ring, and I think it'll continue to go in that direction.
At the end of the day, what lessons can be learned from this controversy? Because it was a controversy at some point.
I think two things. One, the Vatican should do a better job of just sort of instructing visitors before they meet the Pope what the proper protocol is. And then secondly, I think, one, don't read so much into things like this. You know, the Pope, of course, is a great man of humility. His spokesman, Alessandro Giustozzo, said anyone who knows Francis and has seen and knows he loves greeting people, let's not get carried away over something as minor as this.
Keep everything in perspective.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Facebook is being sued, accused of racial discrimination in housing ads. The Department of Housing and Urban Development announced the lawsuit today, charging the social media network with violating the Fair Housing Act. The department accuses Facebook of allowing advertisers to restrict who can view their ads based on things like race, nationality, and religion. Facebook said they're disappointed by the legal action. Still to come on Currents News, Catholic core values boost the robotics team at a Queens Catholic Academy to a citywide victory. A special moment for a man of the male who's been on the job more than half a century. We'll be right back. These are some of the robots created by Catholic students in Queens, and the work done at St. Bartholomew Catholic Academy is being recognized for its excellence. The Catholic core values of students in the 4th through 8th grades has led to a citywide victory. Currents News' Tim Harfman has their story.
Zipping across the science lab floor, this remote-controlled robot can pick up and throw a ball. This group, known as the Sharp Blades, built it from scratch.
It's really awesome being able to build stuff and represent the school.
At a citywide Lego competition, these young inventors from St. Bartholomew Catholic Academy in Elmhurst, Queens, beat nearly 30 other teams in the core values category.
That meant that the judges saw that the team is really a cohesive team. They respect each other, they work together, they have fun while they're working.
Francis Belisario is the leader of this award-winning team, made up of nearly 20 students from the 4th to the 8th grades. The group started working together only a few months ago.
You get 1-2 kids who are great with robot design or research, you get an award. But you have to have every single person in the team working together.
Yeah! The Sharp Blades credit their Catholic education for winning the core values category.
It helps with behavior. It also teaches you to be a good student, a good role model for little kids.
And what they've learned building robots will help them in the future. 5th grader Danielle Toublé dreams of becoming an engineer, following in her father's footsteps. She wants to help people back in her family's homeland of the Philippines.
We travel through boat, which is why I wanted to design a bridge so people with cars can travel from one island to another island.
Now these mini but mighty geniuses are putting their inventions on display at the New York Hall of Science in Queens. At this weekend's expo, they'll show off their robots and core values. SBCA Blades! In Elmhurst, Queens, Tim Hartman, Currents News.
A U.S. postal worker who has more than half a century on the job is being honored. Marvin Raphael worked for the service back when it was the U.S. Post Office Department, and workers earned about $2.25 an hour.
When I first came in the post office, I wasn't sure how long I'd stay.
We just value him overall because his values are so high and his standards are so high that he makes everybody else do more and do better.
Oh, Marvin works the night shift at the Rochester facility, starting his day at 11 p.m. because he says it gives him more time to spend with his family. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.